Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Summer Abigail. She's a 5-star foreigner and she's got no shortage of tricks and gimmicks. But is there actual substance here, or will Abby fall victim to Summer 5 mediocrity? As a quick refresher for the unfamiliar, foreigners have full offensive and defensive class advantage against berserkers and pretenders. You don't have to worry about that second one until Lost Belt 6. They also deal double damage against other foreigners, but have class disadvantage against alter egos. Abigail's first and most unique trick is the Rose's Slumber. It's a 2-turn sleep on a single target that also purges their buffs. The sleep effect reduces their defense by a substantial 50% at level 10, but its victim wakes up after being hit. Because of this, you'll want to follow it up with your strongest attack. Either that or leave them asleep for a turn while you bad touch their companions. Less unique is skill 2, Mass Hysteria. It's an AoE terror effect, which, in addition to putting Abigail on the Department of Homeland Security's radar, is a delayed debuff that has a chance to stun each turn until it procs. Slightly better odds than original Abby, but still only a coin flip each turn. It also comes with an AoE defense reduction. Abigail has no personal defensive effects, so her survivability hinges entirely on her foreigner class advantage and repeatedly stunning enemies before they can double Phantasm. Given that terror doesn't give you much control over when it procs, you'll likely find this a frustrating process. Abby's final skill is Those Who Guide. It increases her debuff success rate, reduces her target's buster resistance, and most importantly, it's a 50% battery on a 6-turn cooldown. This means she's Vich compatible for those of you future-proofing. What you're building up to with this battery is Dreamlands. This noble phantasm is an AoE buster attack that preemptively purges buffs and then applies a defense down after damage. Abigail's kit is big on disruption between her various stun-like effects and buff removal. The fact that Dreamlands can stack a defense down encourages you to stick on a set of targets, however this also prevents you from keeping a target slept since you'll hit everyone on screen and wake them up. Really, Abigail's sheer debuff reliance causes her a lot of problems. First of all, debuffs can be resisted. She has a success chance buff, but a lot of challenging enemies just have blanket debuff immunity. On top of this, another subset of servants have mental debuff immunity, and sleep counts as a mental debuff. And sleep in particular is a bit half-baked. The defense reduction magnitude might be high, but having it last for only a single hit is a huge pain in the ass. Not only do you lose that value, but you have to worry about game states that force you to wake enemies up. For instance, FGO requires you to attack every turn. But what if there's a single enemy left on the field, and you need an extra turn to get your team's defensives up for their NP? Too bad. Unless you have some combination of stunned allies and non-damaging noble phantasms, you physically can't keep them asleep. But Abigail's not all downside. Remember what I said about her battery? Well, that's our lifeline. Any Buster Servant with a 50% battery on a 7-turn or less cooldown is compatible with Koyanskaya of Light, aka Tamamu Vich. By the way, I don't have Abigail on my JP account, so I can't show you footage of this, but it works, you'll just have to take my word for it. With 2 Viches and the Atlas Academy uniform, you can run Abigail with a K-scope. Doesn't even need to be a super scope since the Load Magical Energy append skill can provide the missing 20%. You NP on turn 1 with Vich buffs, activate Those Who Guide and one of Vich's batteries on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you activate the other Vich battery and Atlas's cooldown reduction. This will get Those Who Guide off cooldown, letting you fully charge for a 3rd round of Dreamlands. And with this setup, you can distribute Rose's Slumber and Mass Hysteria as needed. You can even sleep an enemy on wave 2 and 3 because Rose's Slumber has a 6-turn cooldown, meaning it'll come back up with Those Who Guide. Combined with Abigail's naturally high attack stat, and you'd think you have a winning formula. However, Abigail's debuff reliance kneecaps her. You see, most viable farming servants are buff reliant. The advantage of buffs over debuffs is that in farming situations, buffs can't be prevented. You can whiff debuffs, but buffs will always proc barring something insane like BB slot skill sealing you. Thank fuck we never have to farm Seraph again. But even more than that, multi-turn buffs stay on your attacker between waves. Debuffs die with whatever you put them on. On paper, Abigail has defense and buster resistance debuffs, which act as de facto attack and buster buffs. They act on the same parts of the damage formula. However, you don't keep those effects between waves. What this means is that on waves where you don't or can't apply debuffs, her damage plummets. And remember, farming with Abigail pretty much requires you to run K-scope. Aside from its stat line, K-scope has no offensive effect. And if you're running a 0-star scope with the charge append, your damage is even lower since you can't leverage its full attack stat. This puts an immense pressure on you to have high NP levels, and even that might not be enough. So in other words, she's kind of a crusty farmer. Technically viable, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're going above and beyond the point of practicality to power her up. However, it's not all doom and gloom in Salem. An NP1 Abigail does in fact have a use. Her sleep and terror skills are 1st and 2nd respectively, so if you wanted to run a deliberately underleveled Esports Abigail with a taunt CE, you do have that option. In this event, she can put sleep on your main target, die from side mob retaliation, and bring in a proper support for your main attacker. Kind of like an alternate opener for a Superhuman Orion crit setup or someone with a massive noble Phantasm. If you opted to run an Ascended Abigail, then Mass Hysteria can buy you an extra turn of disruption even after she bites it. And remember, the sleep skill also removes buffs. Provided you're fighting someone with removable start of battle buffs, this can gut their ability to fight back even after they wake up. For craft essences, K-Scope is pretty much mandatory for farming setups, Good Poster Girl is the best option for esports applications, Outrage is worse but obtainable in the Rare Prism shop. For non-farming main attacker builds, Aerial Drive stands out for being a 50% charge CE with Buster and NP damage buffs, and of course Black Rail is a fine choice on account of its huge NP damage effect. Interestingly, Abigail has an Anti-Avenger Append skill. Not something you'll necessarily get mileage out of, but quite unusual nonetheless. Fun bit of trivia. Overall, Abby is a tough servant to recommend. On paper, she does things that seem impressive. The buff purges the esports, the capacity to bust your farm, but she's remarkably finicky and due to her damage coming from debuffs, inconsistent. The original Abigail had the excuse of being underpowered because, as the first foreigner, they had no idea how powerful the class would be in practice. But at this point we've had Hokusai XX and Yang. There's not a good reason for Abby to be so underpowered. There's a bad reason. They had to have a nod to the OG, and what's more core to Abigail's playstyle than mass fucking hysteria? What are you kidding me? The shitty RNG stun. Think of what Abby could have done with a real buff instead of that. Or maybe an evade, an invuln, a guts, targeted taunt, something to counter the original's biggest weakness. Look, there's gonna be people that come at me with the usual, imagine caring about power levels. But here's the thing, I like Abigail. I'm a fan of the character. If I could live in the Lost Belt where Abigail and Morgan's power levels were reversed, I'd take that deal any day of the week. But I'm not here to write a puff piece. What, you want me to go, Abigail's a bit rough, but that's just my silly opinion. If she's a must-roll in your heart, then you go for it, Tiger. Everyone's a winner in the waifu wars. Tomoe's great too. Who gives a fuck? It's your money. Spend it how you like. Just don't lie to yourself about what you're getting for it. What, do you need my seal of approval? Just do it. And speaking of doing it, I'll be rolling for Abigail this Sunday. My actual goal is NP10 Murasaki, but we'll see how that goes. Twitch.tv/Finotaisen. My general stream days are Friday through Sunday at 3 PM Pacific. Bit of Somnium, bit of Castlevania. A variety weekend, really. It'll be a good time, I promise. See you there.